All right, gang, and welcome back to Procreate. So what we're going to do in this lesson, I'm going to show you a little bit on perspective, and I'm going to show you how you can use some adjustment tabs to really kind of do a composite. This is not going to be a traditional Photoshop composite. Procreate is not a replacement for Photoshop, but I want to show you how some of the concepts around perspective matter. So let's go ahead and create a screen. Now, we're going to go ahead and go to the canvas, and we're going to turn on the perspective guide, and then we're going to edit it. All right, now where I'm going to place my dot, I'm going to go ahead and place my dot right here. So we're going to do a single 1-point perspective, and everything's kind of going to be going toward this area. All right, so follow along with me. Now, in your downloads, I have a series of photos. We're going to be using these photos, and I'm going to be manipulating bits and pieces to create a scene that wasn't even there. So let's go ahead now, go to image, and let's go ahead first and foremost and insert a photo. Now the first photo we're going to use is of this area. You might have seen this in one of our other lessons. And now, take a look at what's going on with the perspective. You see how those blue lines are kind of following the perspective of the trees? This is going to be a really nice 1-point perspective photo. Now, there's a common theme that those things in the background tend to be a little bit more blurry. So we're now going to use our selection tool, freehand selection, and now we're going to go ahead and grab the background most area. So follow along with me here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to grab this area, and you see that I'm not grabbing the foreground there. All right. Now, with this, I'm going to come over to the Gaussian blur, and I'm going to apply Gaussian blur over to this area. Awesome. Now, one thing that you also notice, things farther away tend to be darker. So step 1, let's go ahead and blur it out a little bit. Step 2, let's go ahead and darken this bad boy up just a skosh. All right, good deal. Now, let's take a look at it. Now, you see that there's a hard line created. You see the differentiation between what we masked out. This is where we come in with our smudge tool. We grab our soft airbrush. I turn up the size of this thing a little bit, and we kind of fade out that line a little bit. So we're bringing kind of the darks in. We're bringing some of the lights back. All right. And you see here, we're getting rid of some of that. It's a good vague area anyway right back there. All right, looks good. Now, let's go ahead and do another one here. We're going to go ahead and grab another image. So let's go ahead and insert a photo. And this time, let's go ahead and grab this old, dead, decayed type tree. All right, now, we're combining all of the techniques that we've used before. We're going to grab the selection tool. I'm going to go with automatic, and I'm going to touch on that tree. Okay, so you've got the tree. Now we're going to go ahead and create a new layer off from the selection. And now what do we have here? Let's go ahead and delete that image, leaving only the tree. Now I want to take away some of the other stuff. So let's go ahead and grab my round brush. And let's go ahead and take away some of this stuff. All right, perfect. And now with this being shown, let's figure out where it goes first. Now, again, we're going to force perspective. We're going to go ahead now, and we're going to position this guy. It's going to be smaller than it should be, and it's going to be further down here in the darkness. Okay, so we're going to come down here now that we kind of know where it is. How dark is it compared to what else is there? We're going to come down here, shrink that bad boy down a little bit, and then we're going to blur it out ever so slightly. Now let's go ahead and do a little bit of motion blur. There we go. All right, so it's clearly identifiable as a tree, but it's definitely down there in the dark. So let's go ahead and do one more. I'm going to come in, I'm going to grab one more layer. Let's go ahead and insert a photo. Let's do another tree, only let's do one that's pretty close. So let's pick, let's go ahead and pick this one. All right, cool. So let's blow this bad boy up. Let's go ahead now, go to selection, automatic selection, and we'll go through there. We'll crank that up just a little bit on the threshold. All right, turn it down a little bit on the threshold. All right, right about there. And now let's make a new layer out of that. And now we'll delete out the image. Awesome. Let's go ahead now. Crank that bad boy down a little bit. All right. And now let's go ahead and position this a little bit in the foreground. Let's make it a little bit bigger now. So we're going to come over here. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to position it a little bit closer to us, right about here. All right. So I kind of like that. Let's go ahead and erase this part. We don't need any of that being shown through there. Go ahead and trim away some of that. And now let's place that kind of where it goes there. All right, looks good. All right, now let's go ahead and do one more here, and I'm going to put some figures in here. So we're going to insert a photo. We're going to come over to this father and son jam here. Let's go ahead and crank that bad boy up a little bit. At least I think they're father and son. And let's freehand select these people. Now, if the figures are closer, right, to the foreground, they'll be a lot more refined and they'll be a little bit brighter. But if they're in the background, they're going to be a little more blurry and they're going to be smaller. Again, force perspective during compositions through the use of tone, size, and focus. All right, and cut them out. Perfect. All right, problem solved, problem staying solved. All right, let's go ahead and grab our brush there, make sure we're on the right layer. Go ahead and crank down. Yep, I want that father-son in that layer. And I'm just going to go ahead, not being terribly scientific about this. You can clean these up as often as you need to. Now, you see how this one has a halo to it that really we can't get away from? Watch what happens. We can go ahead and desaturate this, and now it ceases to even be an issue. So let's go ahead and shrink these characters to the back. So we're going to go ahead and place them to the back, and we're going to place them doing a long walk, right? They're going somewhere. All right. So let's go ahead and turn off this perspective grid. Okay, now these people need to get a little bit more, how do I put this? A little bit more blurry. So let's go ahead and increase the Gaussian blur just a little bit. Okay, now if we were to put other people in there, we could absolutely do that portion. All right. Now, once we've got this portion, let's go ahead now and blur this thing out a little bit. So now I'm going to go over and I'm going to go ahead and pinch across the lower tree and the background. I'm going to take the people, I'm also going to put them in the scene, and I'm going to then shrink this down. So I really have the tree in the foreground and the other in the background. And now I'm going to grab my perspective blur. I'm going to come over to right about where I'm standing, and we're going to just shift them just a little bit outside of focus. All right, just a little bit. All right, so that's kind of how you could use the selection tools that we've talked about, some of the photos that we've talked about, and you can use things like placing that tree in there using the darkness of the image, the focus of the image, and the size of the image in order to create a composite. All right, folks, we'll see you in the next one.